Hello and welcome. I'm Lucia Rahilly, Editorial Director at McKinsey & Company, and your host for this series of live webinars sponsored by the Global Thought Leadership Institute at APQC. Quick note before we start, we are aiming with this series to give you the opportunity to engage with a range of experts and practitioners in the field of thought leadership today. And we hold these webinars on a monthly cadence. You can see our roster by following the GTLI on LinkedIn or by visiting APQC's website at apqc.org/GTLI. You can also take a look at past webinars on our YouTube channel by searching YouTube for at GTLI-APQC. As always, we would love for this session to be as interactive as possible. We want to make this audience back and really useful for those of you who have taken the time out to attend. So we invite you to please send along your questions using the chat functionality, and I will do my best to field as many of them as possible. Today, Scott LEFF and Alia Samhat. Scott is the founder of his eponymous firm, LEFF Communications, which covers the gamut of B2B content services with particular expertise, at least in my view, in research-driven content end-to-end from strategy through content development and implementation. Full disclosure, Scott is also a former colleague of mine from McKinsey, where he was the managing editor of the McKinsey Quarterly more years ago than probably either of us would care to admit. And Alia is a partner at LEFF, and she's a primary leader of the work at LEFF, both generally and as we enter this, simultaneously astonishing and destabilizing landscape that is the AI era. And that brings us to our topic today, which is the challenge that is top of mind for all of us, I think, or it should be, if it's not, how to use AI to accelerate your thought leadership initiatives. Scott and Alia, welcome.
Hey,
good to be here.
yeah, thanks, Lucia, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks for taking the time to be together with us today. Let us get rolling with just some basic context. So, LEFF, your firm works with a plethora of B2B clients. Tell us a bit about what you do and what you're seeing in terms of AI adoption among folks that you serve.
Sure.
And I'll just throw that out. Either of you can take it.
Yeah. We work with, as you said, B2B firms, professional services firms, on content strategy, content creation, like thought leadership, and then amplification and promotion. And so while from that, there are lots of questions about how to elevate the quality of thought leadership, how to get there more quickly, how to increase the ROI on what companies create. And so obviously we've been giving a lot of thought to generative AI and how that can support those efforts. But Alia, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think as far as what we're seeing from our clients and what we're trying to explore ourselves is, I think there's increasing pressure to use it both internally at these organizations, but then also clients trying to understand how or where we might use it. And I think that's a lot of where the kind of use cases and things we'll talk about here were born from. Because I think what's interesting is there's a lot of pressure, but not always a lot of guidance on where to plug it in. So that's kind of what we're aiming to do. And again, what I know we'll talk about here. And I think a lot of that comes from defining kind of our own generative AI philosophy, how, and establishing those guidelines. So.
Okay, that's super helpful. I fall into the camp myself of being astonished, honestly, by AI. I use it regularly, both like in practical ways and to also test the limits of what it can do, which are changing. Some folks obviously are much more skeptical or have different expectations of what it should be able to do from the get. What's your own philosophy on the use and abuse of AI and thought leadership and what its role should be? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd come at it from a few angles. First is this idea of, and it's not mine originally, but we've latched onto it, the human first, human last approach to any kind of tool that you use. That you can't outsource the heavy lifting or deep thinking that it takes to do thought leadership well to a tool or the machines, but you can be thoughtful about how those can help you do your job better and more effectively. The second is this concept of, I heard this last week. I was at a Masters of Scale in San Francisco, the Reid Hoffman Conclave, and one of the speakers said, generative AI raises the floor, but humans raise the ceiling. And so I think that's important because uh, I think part of the resistance that some of our colleagues may feel toward generative AI is this idea that uh, I'm an expert at this. I don't need help. I'm not afraid of the blank page. Um, and uh, and maybe there are some things around the edges that this can do, but generally I've got this. And we've tried hard to uh, avoid that knee-jerk response, open our minds a bit, and really dig in and experiment with what these tools can do. One of the things that we found is that and it makes it more complicated as we're getting our arms around this stuff, is that each tool excels in different areas. And so if you're looking for, say, ChatGPT to do everything well, it doesn't. That's not the case. So it takes a little bit of exploration to figure out what tools you can plug into different parts of the process and that are going to save you the time and elevate what you do. But Alia, anything to add
No,
there?
the resistance, I think, I mean, a lot of it is understandable. I think there's a self-preservation aspect to that. And certainly in the conversations we have with clients, there's a lot about the economics of content creation, like the time and the cost. Um, I think what we're trying to navigate a bit is because we know time and cost are obviously incredibly important. But the other piece of the equation, I think, is the impact of content. So, why do we create it in the first place? For our clients, McKinsey, Lucia, your organizations like yours, it's like there are a lot of big, smart ideas to get out into the world, help people make sense of, trends, research. And I think if we can use AI to do that more quickly and address the time and cost aspect, but also do it with really smart, critical thinkers and great writers and great communicators, that's really, I think, where the magic happens. Because if you're so focused on the time and cost element, you probably end up with some like competent pieces of work, but I don't know if that's what anybody is aspiring to or should be aspiring to. I
So,
think that's what we're figuring out here.
yeah, I mean, you said a lot of interesting things there that I want to follow on. But maybe before we do, we could anchor a little bit to try to bring this to life for folks and turn a bit to the how you're using AI and where you think it can be most effective as you look end to end across that content value chain. So maybe start with, you know, at a high level, talk to us about the criteria you're using to determine whether AI is actually adding value or just introducing novelty. I mean, which is entertaining. We use it all the time to entertain ourselves, but not necessarily efficient. Where is it genuinely adding value in your view? So talk to us about those criteria.
Try to break it down a little bit to make it a little bit easier to think about. Nikki, if you don't mind, maybe flashing our little matrix up on the screen. Because we're trying to, right, to create that guidance, better define a few areas, a few criteria. So I'll run through them, and then Scott, maybe you can talk a bit about these. But we're trying to think on educate, automate, accelerate, and elevate. Not to just add another framework into the world, but help people think about this. So Scott, let me throw it over to you to kind of talk through a bit. You heard from me.
Yeah, well, our our thought was that using these principles to home in on the tasks involved in thought leadership that are candidates for benefiting from generative AI. And so, uh, I apologize for this framework rhyming, but it was actually easy to get all of these to rhyme. So if it makes it easier to remember, great. But you'll see, say in the accelerate and elevate quadrant there.
I mean, I just have to say, you never should have mentioned the rhyming. Now that's just going to be going nonstop, but keep going. Yes.
All right. And I'm sure there are more
Realize
principles
it.
we could rhyme, but we came up with four. Um, and these are all areas where we've started to dig in and explore and look at again how generative AI can support these tasks, what specific tools are effective, and the approach that we took to get to that value. And so we'll walk through a few more of these. I think the other thing, this framework it reflects a bit that now, like a regularly cited MIT study that talked about 95% of Gen AI pilots not adding value. And I think the interesting thing there is that it's where generative AI was applied and maybe the misunderstanding of where it could bring value. So in more than 50% of those areas or pilots, they were for sales and marketing, which obviously important ways for generative AI to help. But the study found that the greatest potential was in the back office, like business process outsourcing, some of the other repeatable tasks, finance, other things. And so some of these experiments reflected, an effort on our part to get our arms around where that value really lies in that sales and marketing bucket.
Interesting. So Alia, anything to add there, or do you want to get practical and walk us through some of the use cases you've tested, where AI worked or didn't, if that's
Yeah.
relevant?
Yeah, no, we can jump in, and I can maybe give you a bit on when we came up with these rhyming words, what we're thinking for each of these, like educate, because I think that also probably helps understand like why are things plotted the way they are, and knowing that this is only a small subset of obviously the broader use cases, but areas where we've actually found it helpful. So on educate, we have these activities over here because we can get more research done more quickly, a sense of trends, best practices, and just make decisions a bit faster, right? And that ultimately, with that background, helps us elevate content. And by elevate, we're really thinking about the final product. Is the quality stronger? Have we elevated the quality of that final product? Automate is obviously just things that we used to do manually. Let's automate these. We don't need to spend manual time on certain elements. And then accelerate, really just streamlining processes. So things that you can't fully automate, but if we can tweak ways of doing things, we can do things a bit faster. And again, that probably gets back to that time and cost of content creation. If we can do things a little bit faster and still elevate the final product, it's kind of a win-win.
Yes, and I can jump in and walk through an experiment we did in market research if you're interested in the outcome. It's some real headlines here. Everyone knows who's involved in thought leadership that an important aspect of it is ensuring that whatever you put out there is advancing the conversation, not just parroting what other people have written before, but trying to break new ground, establish your credibility and authority on a topic. And so market research is critical to that effort, but it's also really time consuming. And in the past, our company has work with clients to do competitive analysis and look what other companies are putting out, identify white space, and to do that well and authoritatively takes a lot of time because you really have to dig in. But we felt this was a prime area for generative AI because of its ability to analyze a large amount of information quickly. So the experiment we came up with was we wanted to get a sense of what large firms are writing about data centers and energy demand. So we looked at the Big Four and Accenture, and then we came up with prompts to get those results and then analyze them and identify the white space. And one of the important things we found here is I know that there's been a lot written about prompts, prompt engineering, and the importance of that, right? And we found for this experiment that going in a sequential way, so not doing a 2,000 word prompt, but breaking up those tasks so that you weren't overwhelming the tools, got us to a far better outcome. So it was, for instance, to tell us about all of the articles that Deloitte has written in the past 6 months about data centers and energy demand. And then shampoo, rinse, repeat for the other 3 or 4 competitors. And then we said, based on the results for these 4 prompts, then analyze what are the themes, who has excelled, and then find us the white space, what hasn't been written about. And we tested ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and Claude, and it was interesting. Not all of each tool return different articles for each competitor. So while it was it wasn't comprehensive and it wasn't exhaustive, but it did provide some detail. And so we also looked at the types of the way that research was put to us and any suggestions. And we found that ChatGPT and Claude were actually much more proactive in the recommendations and suggestions. And in the end, when we asked for white space, ChatGPT not only listed 10 different topics or angles on this, but then broken into tiers as far as how we might tackle these different articles. And so it was, I found that to be really helpful. And I came away feeling like there's no reason not to do this for every single article or campaign you would undertake. What was once, so time intensive that it was prohibitive often, now you can do in the span of 10 or 15 minutes, even if you don't get every article to register, that's been published over the past 6 months. It does give you 90% of the way there, and then you can make far better and more informed decisions. So excited about that. Now we know also that identifying the white space is just one part of it. Then you have to go to a company and ensure that the experts feel like they have something to say and are excited about these topics, and that it also showcases some of the talents and strengths of a company. But as far as a foundation for that process, we found it to be really helpful.
What I find super interesting about that is that folks in the thought leadership, so to speak, to use that term, community, often talk about LLMs being helpful in synthesizing past research, but not necessarily in identifying ways of approaching white space. But to be clear, that's what you're saying that you found with chat. That in other words, chat was identifying the potential for novel points of view, versus simply saying, here's what's been written about in the past, and here's what was good, and here's what was bad, and here's, how you could think about a new piece that's based on what's already been published.
Yeah, that's exactly what it did. And I know that lots of people look to generative AI for brainstorming or iteration, and we found it excelled, in that sense of providing those angles that um, you might not consider initially, but that were helpful thought starters. I saw one question come up in the chat about did we vet
At the results, yeah.
the results, and we did go through and look at ensure that the links that it provided were actual articles from the different companies, or that we didn't have time to go through and actually vet the white space and go back through the whole process to ensure that at each step it was completely accurate and exhaustive. But again, for the time that it took to return those results,
Right.
it like
So fast, yeah.
yeah. I mean that you're already far ahead of where you would be after 10 or 15 minutes of thinking and iterating. So huge value there.
Yeah.
Will you say something about on your matrix? I saw video concepting.
Yeah.
Video is expensive, generally speaking, to produce, and it's an investment for companies. And obviously, it's a growth area, as even executives now start like you are regularly using YouTube and consuming on YouTube. It's like a massive opportunity space, I think, for folks in the consulting field, at least. What is your how did you use it in video concepting, and how did it work?
Yeah. So let me give you two examples. One being, a client comes to us looking for a video on X topic. It might be more of a stock graphics driven video, or they might want to feature some of their experts. I think for like as a talking head video. And what we try to do is like, okay, how can we elevate the content? What are some stylistic approaches or maybe interesting production elements that would take this beyond the standard talking head or beyond something that people are used to seeing? And for that, and this is something we used to do in the past, more, I guess, through Google, let's say. And of course, generative AI, chat GPT like tools, Gemini have kind of sped up the process where I would look up, choose video in style talking head with graphics, or like talking head with data visualization. So I could really articulate to a client, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I think could work, and here are some examples of that, because a lot of our clients want to A, see what's been done before, or B, when you're pitching a video concept, most helpful to show an actual example to bring that to life a bit and really get them to engage with it differently than words on a page, obviously. So, that's something, again, YouTube, Google have been doing for years, and started leaning more heavily on ChatGPT and Gemini in particular to find all of those examples. So it really accelerates that process. But we also do, that's really our more, I would say, thought leadership or SME focused video content. We also do a lot, and again, for B2B firms, a lot in the more creative space, creative realm. And what I've started to lean on, and I have a more recent example of this, is Veo, which is Google's, video generation tool. To put in a prompt that gets across like, okay, here's what I have in my head. I can't find it exactly, but if I, generate something through Veo, will that help them get the vision? So did that recently, and actually it did a really nice job. It generates like an 8-second clip in about, I don't know, depending on what you ask it, anywhere from like 10 seconds to a minute.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so I was able to say, like, because again, typically in the past, when I've put together these video boards, it'll be like screenshots and links.
Right.
It's like a live dynamic thing you can look at. Nothing usable, I would say. Example, in this particular video I created recently through VO to share with them, as somebody bends down, when they get up, the whole side of their arm starts getting cut off, like from the AI screen, kind of similar to when people move on a Zoom screen.
Mhm.
So again, it's rough, it's rudimentary. Nothing that feels polished and complete, but enough to accelerate the ideation process and really get, for us, on the agency side, get clients excited about something, and excited about what this could be. And that's something that if I were doing the same thing with an actual video or editing, I mean, it would take a lot of time and their budget. And I just, again, on the agency side, that's not us being a great steward of their resources. So yeah, it's been good.
I am so excited for Sora. Do you
Yeah,
have access
Sora
to
2
Sora?
just came out. We haven't played around. I played around with it actually when it first came out, but
Mhm.
more heavily on VO. But yeah, Sora, the latest Sora is here. So
It's supposed to be amazing, yeah.
But
Um,
a quick point on Sora, because this came up at the conference last week. They said it's good enough that we've now gotten to the point where the average person isn't going to be able to tell between real video and AI generated video, which of course opens up a host of other issues. But one of the things that may happen, and I think we've already seen it happen with LinkedIn, is that it's been pumped full of AI generated content that has overwhelmed the channel and made people question what's the value in this, and how do real insights break through. And so it'll be interesting to see if there is that drive toward authenticity, quality, the human element in certain types of formats or storytelling. But they definitely they unleash the monster on the village. We'll see.
it is amazing. I mean, we all have talked for years since the uptick in digital about the crowded content market, right? And there's been so much written for years now again about fragmented attention and the attention economy. And now, I mean, they've been talking about AI slop for years, but now it's like we're all waiting for AI to cause this Vesuvius-like eruption of content. I mean, how do you think strong content will stand out in this context, or are we all destined for Pompeii?
I it often in times like these, my point of reference is music and
Mhm.
some of the technological advances in music. And if some of you recall, when MP3s came out, the audiophiles were complaining that the sound quality was terrible. And Neil Young created his own startup and player, Pono, I think, in order to combat that. And it failed miserably because the convenience of MP3s outweighed anybody's interest in high quality audio. And and so I think that there's going to be an element of that here that people's standards will probably drop a bit.
Yeah.
But I also think, and we've already seen on YouTube where there are lots of AI generated videos or AI voiceovers where you can get about 5 seconds into those videos and you think, nope, I don't want to spend my time doing this because this was generated by a machine. It's not really for me. And so I think that for anyone who's involved in creating content or thought leadership, uh, they're going to need to be really thoughtful about what they want to say, the insights that they have, and deliver it in a way that actually stands out from some of that kind of very baseline content that we're all going to be inundated with soon, if not already.
Right. I find AI generated videos to be exceptional in the context of like animals going off diving boards and doing flips. We can watch those endlessly in my household, but it will be interesting to see how these tools become deployed in the thought leadership context. I mean, we've done testing with avatars and so forth, and it's interesting. But it's still a bit legible that the avatars are AI avatars. That will change though, right? Like things are advancing so quickly. So it will be very interesting to see how this evolves. Okay, we have a few questions. I want to make sure we integrate these. One is on video. When do you guys use Sora in your work? Well, I don't think you're using Sora. You're using a different tool, and wondering how people are using this. So just say a bit on that.
No, yeah, briefly, the tool that we've been using, and this is just, part of our paid access to it, is VO, which is Google's tool. It also integrates with their data viz tool Looker, their business intelligence tool. So yeah, really using it more as a brainstorming tool, again, helping visualize things for clients more quickly. In a way where in the past, we might have been putting together storyboards and linking to things. Instead, we can quickly give them, here's an 8-second clip that kind of tells you conceptually what we're going for and how we want the visual to look, but less so Sora for this type of work, for our client work.
It's like sharing a draft. It's like creating a video draft, which used to be so prohibitively time intensive, right?
Yeah, you go through. Oh, sorry. Good.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say you'd go through the process of mood boards and sometimes sketches and it would take a few weeks to get people to weigh in and cost a lot more. And now
Yeah.
well,
It's easier. I mean, it's easier for clients to react to that. And then, for us, and that also helps us get to the results faster or get to the work faster. And there's still, I think, a time and place for that full creative process, but I definitely think it's been accelerated quite a bit.
Okay, related question on tools, but in the context of data. Are you seeing specific AI tools or processes helping uncover, crunch, or generate client data to accelerate original content? And what are the pros and cons?
On the data, so I will say we don't use anything unpublished of our clients in any of these tools. So it's less about the uncover crunch. One of the things on accelerating original content, one of the things I found it helpful for is more, and I mentioned this, data visualization using sometimes dummy data, but often I found, and again, this is similar to video or other visual media, where in the past you might play with a handful of different ways to communicate or convey a message. Or a client will say, I really want a map. Could we do this in a map? So we'll use it to create a map and then see like, okay, well, does this say what you're trying to say, or is it almost obscuring the message? Is a map really the best way to communicate this? So I think it allows us to play around with some of that. And again, what I'm typically using is dummy data for that and I think there's a legal question and legal ethical concerns around that, but it does help play around with those concepts. And again, rather than doing the manual work and find like, you know what, that does obscure what I'm trying to tell people, or this isn't the clearest way to get that the point across. It allows us again to accelerate that process.
on the data end of things, we also did another experiment on survey tools and which ones had incorporated AI and so that might be relevant for this, in that we know lots of companies lean heavily on surveys to inform their thought leadership, or even as feature articles. And traditionally, before these online tools, it was a huge expense, and you were dealing with an external vendor, and it required lots of expertise in how to structure the questions, and then code the survey, create some kind of pleasant user experience, and then analyze the data afterward. And so we looked at ways to the tools that are out there, like SurveyMonkey, Typeform, Google Forms, and then a company called TrueDot, which is an AI native platform, to see how it could accelerate those steps. And it's really exciting. The short answer is that it can, much like the market research, you can go from now a topic and a concept for a survey to an online link that's ready to go out into the field in the span of about 15 minutes. Yeah, and we found that TrueDot was the best tool, in that you could upload whole reports on topics, and a brief to say, I'd like a 15 question survey on say data centers and energy demand, and then it would spit it out, and you could iterate on it either in the tool or in a Word doc. It would once you made your tweaks and uploaded the Word doc, it automatically generated a survey that you could alter the question types so that it wasn't just multiple choice and you were boring people to tears 3 or 4 questions in. And then out into the field it goes. You can do automatic crosstabs, AI generated results, synthesis of open-end questions for themes, and then also highlights of what the findings were. So it's that to me is really exciting. Perfect example of something that used to be time-consuming and costly, and is now nearly instantaneous, much cheaper, and then allows if you're focused on creating the thought leadership, allows you to focus on the story that you're telling and doing it as effectively as possible.
Yeah, that's huge. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking mostly about survey design, hypothesis testing, synthesis of results, and so forth. Have you moved into looking at synthetic data at all in terms of panels and fielding results?
We haven't done synthetic data yet, and I know that there are. I've worked on some projects where the potential of synthetic data has been heralded as a real game changer, but haven't seen it implemented at scale in a way that I can really comment, with any experience.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring in this question about legal issues surrounding the use of AI. Have you encountered any? Do you have governance protocols in place? How do you interact with clients about that piece of using AI in work? Especially, so for example, there's a lot of IP related. I don't know how much you're using it for imagery. There's a lot of IP controversy about images.
We I think I mentioned, and this is again legal ethics, the whole shebang, is that we don't input any of our client data, anything proprietary, into any of these platforms. To your point, Lucia, we don't use it for any AI generated images. I think right now that's still pretty sticky. When we're using it, it might be, we have a couple of these use cases on that matrix, but it's like, retouching images, or cutting out images, like those types of things, so that we really, it's more, again, a tool rather than anything that we have like depth of legal concerns. But a lot of our much larger clients are obviously building out their own proprietary LLMs. So, we're not running into those types of legal issues, but I think we have a pretty good sense of how to make sure we aren't running into any legal issues around that. And we don't give our clients anything that is output from a tool. Even if it's done, like as Scott said, maybe some foundational research or the video concepting, it's nothing that we're ever actually using in an end product.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'd add too, just because of OpenAI's ongoing lawsuit, I think with is the New York Times or but because of that lawsuit, any prompt you enter into ChatGPT is discoverable. And so they're saving it. They've been instructed by the court to save it. And so that's just a huge red flag for us, and something that we've emphasized with our team to really be uh, uh, just on point about, so that we're not, getting into that gray area where we can jeopardize client confidentiality.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone from a different agency just yesterday, and he was telling me that one of those AI spotters, like those detector systems that alerts you that a piece has been written using AI, incorrectly said that 40% of an article that they'd, sweat over and drafted themselves was attributable to AI. It was like, that nightmare Jacques moment where the client was like, we ran this through our, and have you do you have any horror stories? Like, have any debacles emerged for you as a result of using AI, or has anything gone wrong in your pilots that folks could learn from about avoiding?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess not to pat ourselves on the back, but that hasn't happened for us just yet. But I have seen a couple horror stories and some from, organizations we're close to that I think are less on the content creation side, but almost like, how did anyone let this like get out into the world? So I'll share this example briefly. I know we're coming up on time.
That's also true when it's not AI, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, go ahead.
But things that do feel very clearly generated by artificial intelligence, and which maybe intelligence is like a misnomer in this case, but there's a campaign they did, really a brand campaign, and they juxtaposed these two images together, showing two different approaches to basically problem solving. And in one, the approach was, a little unwieldy, challenging, complex. And in the other image, it was like smooth, efficient, collaborative. And then you look in the two people in this, or three people across these images in this unwieldy, don't do it this way, young woman of color. In the other one, two older white gentlemen. So you're just kind of like, wait, how did this get out the door? And kind of have to pull that back. And so those types of things where, again, you really need that human layer, like who are you creating this for and how should we be thinking about it? And adding that like depth of humanity to it, I think is critical.
Yeah, but one thing I'd add, and I'd imagine a lot of people on this call may have run into this, is the assumption that author teams or clients will have that generative AI can make anything better. And so if you have an outline or a draft, you've gotten to a certain point, put it into ChatGPT and it'll punch it up and it'll make it better. And my own experience with that is that the drafts often come back incomprehensible, and then you spend more time trying to divine what they were trying to say. And it comes from an honest attempt to help speed the process along. But I think it reinforces that for those of us in this field, we need to figure it out for ourselves. And we also need to be vocal about educating people on where it can best be used, because left to our own devices, there's no end to the havoc we can wreak.
Um, And just on this topic of educating people, and I'm not asking this actually, this sounds like a softball. But I genuinely don't know the answer to this just because I think of you as developing content. But is advising on AI and educating places on AI becoming a service line? Do you see that becoming a service line for you? Could folks contact you for help in determining where and how to use AI while navigating these kinds of risks?
We have we formed a generative AI task force about 8 months ago, and so we've been conducting this research regularly. And no, it's hard to tell who the experts are in this Wild West kind
Yeah.
of moment.
Yeah.
But we're always happy to share what we know with people. And I think to wrap up some of the human machine collaboration, I think hopefully we can advise some people as to where these tools could be most effective and how they can get the most out of their expertise in using these tools.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I think everybody in our field right now is looking for some of that guidance and understanding the best practices. So it's more like a kind of collaborative effort to try to get through that. And I think we've seen in our smaller organization, it's probably like a microcosm of maybe what other larger organizations see, where you have people who are really excited about it and want to use it everywhere, and then you almost have to pull it back a little bit, people who are really resistant to it. And there's probably something in the middle that I think is a good way for all of us to work and use it as a tool, but not losing the kind of intellectual lift and I mean the fun that comes with working with smart people to create fun things to read and watch and important things to consume. So, you never want to lose that. That's hopefully, I think a lot of why we're all here too.
Okay, we are over time. I could talk to the two of you all day long. Scott and Alia, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Great to talk with you.
And again, for more about upcoming events hosted by the GTLI, including future webinars, please visit the APQC website at apqc.org/GTLI. Join us in Houston, February 5th through 6th at the GTLI 2026 Symposium. Hopefully, you will be able to meet Scott and Alia there in person, and you can learn more and register here. You can see the HTML on the page here. It's www.gtlisymposium.org/2026. We've also got a great webinar coming up in November with Cindy Anderson, who's the CMO of IBM's Institute of Business for Business Value, on the new standards for thought leadership that are being codified by the GTLI. And you can also subscribe to our weekly GTLI newsletter for highlights of the best thought leadership of the moment. Curation is always a plus, and per our discussion, we are destined to be flooded with slop. So follow the GTLI on LinkedIn, subscribe to the newsletter. Have a great day or evening, and be well.
Thank you all.
Thanks.